the idea of abolishing the Department of Education. It's something he has promised to work on. I don't think it's as simple as him snapping his fingers, but, I've read some articles about how they can go about dismantling the Department of Education. What does that mean if we're getting rid of the Department of Education on the federal level?
So a little bit of history on this. I actually spent a better part of last week just researching this issue because there's been a lot of conversation. And I've been a proponent for years, probably decades, about getting rid of the Department of Education. It was one of these things where in 1909, President Jimmy Carter had promised the National Education Association, one of the largest teachers unions out there, that he would ensconce in D.C. an official Department of Education to have a secretary and make it official. And so they passed laws in 1979. Well, of course, all that kind of came to pass as Ronald Reagan's coming into office afterwards. But what I found interesting was that's not the first Department of Education that happened in the country. There was a previous Democratic president, Andrew Johnson, in 1867, who had done the same thing. But it didn't last that long because everybody realized it was a bad idea. And so it existed for a short period of time, and then they basically got rid of it. And so when Jimmy Carter did it, this is as the federal government really is growing in terms of entitlements and in terms of, bureaucrats, and the bureaucracy is just massive. And as that's all happening, you have a department that will not go away. And so they, of course, have to bring things upon themselves and start piling responsibilities and programs and how do we help poor school districts and the such. I can understand the impetus to have a federal conversation about education. What I don't understand is how you can justify it through the Constitution of the United States. There's nowhere in the Constitution that talks about having education or education being a primary responsibility of the federal government.
Right.
And in fact, it pretty much says, all the things that aren't discussed in here should go back to the states and then to the locals, right? So if you look at the whole Department of Education, it is a huge fiction that's created to support a mob. And the mob is the teachers union. And there is no other reason to have the Department of Education except to hire 4,400 bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to tell everybody else what to do, but not teach a single individual child.